Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're going to call to order the meeting of the Indian River Lagoon Council for Board of Directors for May 9th, 2025. If everybody would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and again, welcome to today's meeting. If we could, we want to start down at this end and have everyone introduce themselves and staff, and then we'll get to the rest of the meeting. So
I'm pressing the button, no light.
It came on your mic. It's on. There you go.
Oh, there it is. I was looking. All right. We're good to go. I'm Aaron Watkins, representing the Department of Environmental Protection. I'm the director of the Central District Regulatory Office.
Hi, I'm James Clasby, County Commissioner for St. Lucie County. I was just elected in November. This will be my first meeting here. Fifth generation from St. Lucie County, big fan of the river my entire life, so looking forward to serving on this council.
Welcome. I'm Jeff Brower, Volusia County Chair.
Good morning, Cole Oliver with the St. John's Water Management District.
Good morning, Kim Atkinson, Brevard County District 30.
Joe Urban, Chairman of the Lagoon Council and County Commissioner from Indian River County. Also, I would tell you that we will have a new member, Mr. Tom Hurley, who's the Chairman and CEO of Becker Holding Company in Fort Pierce, was nominated and appointed by Governor DeSantis to represent the South Florida Water Management District and will be joining us hopefully at our next meeting. So, also here today we have, and please raise your hands or stand up, Craig Esterly, Chief of Surface and Water Protection Branch of the United States Environmental Protection Agency Region 4. And Craig, anything you want to come up and enlighten us about?
Brief remarks. So I'll be very brief. That's right. I'm the branch chief of our Surface Water Protection Branch. That includes our water quality standards, monitoring, modeling, our assessment, our listing capabilities, and our NPDES permitting program in Region 4, which serves from Kentucky all the way down to Florida, North Carolina, all the way over to the Delta of Mississippi. So we see a little bit of everything in the South here, but this is one of my favorite places to be. So I really wanted to start off by thanking Chairman and the board for inviting me here today. I'm going to be serving as appointed by my Water Division Director, Kathleen Butler, as her Senior Management Advisor for the Indian River Lagoon, which I understand is one of our flagship NEP programs in the country and well-deserved reputation. We appreciate the comprehensive mid-year accomplishment reporting that we received in April very recently, and we recognize that these accomplishments are only possible because of the strong leadership at the local level and the synergy achieved through meaningful partnerships across the Indian River Lagoon watershed. EPA well understands the relationship between a healthy lagoon, healthy people, and a healthy economy. We congratulate you on your investment in people power to the NEP by hiring community engagement coordinators that we understand have amplified your messaging by 450%. That's spectacular. From septic to sewer to muck removal, restoring bivalve and seagrass habitat, to community engagement and education. It's our belief that you're hitting all the right buttons and you're truly making a difference. And it matters. So again, that's all I was going to say, but I just really wanted to thank you for inviting me here today. I'm here to listen and learn from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Commissioner Hurd, we're glad you can make it. I'm sure the traffic's not always the best, but you made it, and that's all that counts. Well, thank you. All right, Commissioners, any changes or additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. We have one addition from staff.
Okay.
And we would be wanting to bring that under consent to appoint Mike Johansson from Indian River County to serve on the Management Board and the Finance Subcommittee.
Okay, we'll get that when we get to the consent. Any other changes, additions, or deletions? So, take a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Oliver, second by Commissioner Hurd. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Do we have any resolutions, recognitions, letters, and awards? Okay. Move on to public comment. Aaron, correct, this one? Okay. This is Brent Wallenberg of 13855 99th Street in Fellsmere, Florida. Septic tanks and nutrition pollution. Yes, sir.
I'm glad to be here. Okay. Calcium carbonate sand or shell will not react with water. They will react with acid. Nitrification is a result of acidification. If you pour vinegar on an oyster shell, you might see an occasional bubble. That is because there is not a lot of surface area for acid to react with. The more fine the calcium carbonate sand, the more foam from chemical reaction when you pour vinegar on it. I have found very fine talcum powder like calcium carbonate sand, and when vinegar is poured on it, acid-base reaction is the strongest. You can put oyster shells in the lagoon, and it will take many decades for acid to have any effect on them. I have seen oyster shells put on the shore where violent wave action crushes them up, so the more surface area for acid-base reaction to take place. When very fine talcum powder sand is put in the lagoon, acid will most likely turn it to liquid before it hits the bottom. This information is critical to having a good septic tank drain field, because the same reaction that took place on the shores of our lagoon, of our historic lagoon, that, that speeded up the chemical reaction between high pH pee and low pH ammonia or poop, is the same reaction that takes place in calcium carbonate drain fields. Many drain fields are mostly hard calcium carbonate gravel with not a lot of surface area for acid to react with. These drain fields can be rejuvenated by a simple application of fine calcium sand on the surface, so rain will wash it down. I would like to see the shores on all our lakes, we get drinking water from lined with shells turning violently, and these waves turning violently in these shells neutralizes acid, so underwater plants can absorb the nutrients. And people will not have to pee or poop in their drinking water. In lakes, it is important for chemical reaction to take place on shore and not in the middle of the lake, so vegetation can absorb the nutrients underwater. If you put calcium sand in the middle of the lake, green slime type of algae will get the nutrients first, and this is not good in the freshwater lakes. Growing up, boats covered lakes and crappie were so abundant the limit was 100. I believe if shells were put on the shores of freshwater lakes, crappie will come back faster than people can catch them. And the muck is actually, they're dredging, that is your seagrass. If you put sand in the muck, you'll have seagrass growing as far as you can see. And the green turtles making a comeback like gangbusters because they eat this seagrass. And it was once thought that the green turtle, sea turtle, was the most abundant life form on Earth. And it's kind of exciting for me because I know and hear that it can be brought back to feed everyone. So I hope it'll be exciting for you guys too.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to item number 6, water quality reports. We'll start with the Northern and Central Lagoon. Lauren Hill with the St. Johns River Waters Management District.
Of the board. I'm Lauren Hall with the St. Johns River Water Management District. I'm in the estuary section. Today I'm going to present on the Northern and Central Indian River Lagoon and just give you an update on the water quality conditions and a few other items. To start off with, I just wanted to mention the precipitation that we've had over the last few months. As you can see from the maps I'm showing here, it has been very dry. Just a quick note about this year compared to last year. This is fairly similar to the conditions that we had over the same time period last year. Okay, so now I'd like to move on to present the continuous monitoring data. We have several continuous monitoring sites throughout the lagoon. We have a site in southern Mosquito Lagoon, site in Titusville, one in Cocoa, a site in Banana River Lagoon just north of 520 Causeway, a site just outside of the Ogallie River, and a site in Vero Beach just north of State Road 60. These sites collect water quality data every hour, and all of that data is available on our website. So this is showing the depth for between February and April 2025, and you can see that it has been fairly stable across all of our sites. The Vero site that you see that is lower depth than the other sites is just simply because the sonde is at a shallower depth. It is just a shallower site, and so we can't put the sonde down quite at the same depth as the other sites. This is all just where the sonde location is. It's not really indicative of the location itself. It's really more just what sort of changes we're seeing over time. Moving on to salinity, with this dry weather that we've been having, we have seen salinity increases throughout all of our stations. Temperature, we are getting closer to summer, so our temperature has also been increasing at all of our stations. Moving on to dissolved oxygen. So the hypoxia level of about 2 to 3 milligrams per liter is where we start to see impacts to fish and other invertebrate species out in the lagoon. We are seeing that we are having some dips at certain sites. The Banana River site, we saw some dips below 3 milligrams per liter throughout February. At the site in Cocoa, we were seeing some dips below that hypoxia level in March, but over the last month, we have not seen any of our stations dip below that hypoxia level, so that's been very good. Moving on to turbidity, for anyone that has spent any time out on the water over the last few months, you've probably noticed that it has been a particularly windy late winter and early spring. So we are seeing a lot of variability in our turbidity data, so things tend to kick up, and then as soon as that wind dies down, things settle back out fairly quickly. Moving on to FDOM, so this is a measure of how much color is in the water. We do tend to see a lot of fluctuations whenever we get rainfall events, but it has been fairly dry, so we're not seeing a lot of changes through most of our stations. The one station that you're seeing a lot of variability at is that Vero station, and that is just north of State Road 60, where we have a lot of freshwater input, and so I believe that's why you're seeing a lot of that variability there. And then moving on to chlorophyll A, so this is one of the most critical components that we're measuring out there at these continuous monitoring sites because it is indicative of what sort of phytoplankton blooms we have going on. I have them separated out because I really wanted you to be able to kind of dial in on a few particular sites. We are seeing, things are definitely heating up out there as we get into the warmer temperatures. So we are seeing some blooms throughout different areas of the lagoon, particularly in southern Mosquito Lagoon. This bloom that we're seeing is Ario umbra, which is the brown tide species that we've seen in previous years. It's not at the levels that we were seeing back in 2016 and 2012, but we are still seeing these elevated chlorophyll concentrations, so we're keeping a close eye on that. Once you get above about 10 RFU, that's when you can really see a visible bloom, and we are hitting those concentrations at this point. So what has that done to the water clarity out there? This is showing the Secchi depths between February and April, and the lower Secchi depths, the 0 to 0.5, is poor water clarity, and when you get above that 1.5, you're seeing that really nice clear water. So what I do want to point out here is that as we're moving from February through April, we are seeing a decline in water clarity, especially in the northern lagoon and that southern Mosquito Lagoon where we are seeing those phytoplankton blooms. So moving on, shifting gears to our seagrass mapping. We map seagrasses every 2 years. Our previous map was done in 2023, so 2025 is a mapping year. We are currently in the aerial photography acquisition phase, and so we are trying to just wait for the conditions to be just right for us to get that imagery. It is, the conditions, there's really a lot of things that have to be right to get the best imagery so that we're able to map the seagrass accurately. We're looking for clear skies, calm water, good water clarity, and a high biomass of seagrass. So we are at that point where the biomass is high enough now that we can see those grass beds, but we're just waiting for those weather conditions to cooperate so that we can get these photos. And then we'll move on to the next several steps. This whole process takes about a year and a half from start to finish before we get the completed map. Just a reminder, you probably remember from previous presentations that in 2023, we did map a section of the lagoon for Caulerpa prolifera, which is an attached macroalgae. We are doing that again in 2025, and we are going to do it for the entire lagoon, not just a smaller section. And this is thanks to a contribution from DEP, so that we were able to increase our budget for mapping this year to include that entire lagoon. Caulerpa is a really important component. It can absorb nutrients very quickly. It can also release nutrients very fast when it dies back. So this is something that we really want to make sure we're keeping track of. While I'm on the topic of Caulerpa, I just wanted to share with you a video from a site that we have up at Pine Island across from the power plants near Port St. John. And what I'm showing here is a Caulerpa bed that is being fed on by a Caulerpa slug. The genus is Elysia. You can see the little green guy there. She's laying some eggs right at this spot, and you might be able to make out the swirl as the camera continues on. So these slugs are able to really decimate a Caulerpa bed very quickly. We have not been seeing them in very high numbers over the last few years, but we are seeing them in very high numbers now. And I've counted up to 200 slugs per meter squared in certain locations. So they really can be very, very abundant. So this right there, that's one of the egg masses. And a lot of times the egg masses are visible before we can even find the slugs. The slugs are the same color as the Caulerpa because they do incorporate that chlorophyll as they're feeding on the Caulerpa. So Caulerpa prolifera, that was the bed that I was just showing you that's being grazed on by the Elysia slug. It's the most dominant out there. It's the one that forms these really vast meadows. But we do have several other species of Caulerpa throughout the lagoon. This feathery one, Caulerpa cercularioides, Caulerpa cuprossoides, Caulerpa verticillata, and Caulerpa racemosa. There are other species, Mexicana and several others, but these are the most common ones that we see in the lagoon. But recently we came across another species in the northern Indian River Lagoon north of Haulover Canal called Caulerpa eschmedii. So this particular species has not been reported in the World Register along the east coast of Florida. So at this point, we're really investigating whether or not it's a new sighting. We're kind of taking a deep dive right now into the literature to see if it's been reported in other papers. We did find a paper just in the last 24 hours from 1983 where Dr. Carrie Clark, professor at FIT, had reported it in northern Indian River Lagoon, but we have not seen any other reports so far of this species in the lagoon. I've been crawling around the bottom of the lagoon for the last 29 years, and this is the first time I've seen it in the lagoon. So we're going to be keeping an eye on this to see whether or not it expands and see how far this potential range expansion has been.
So this is a good thing?
We don't know yet. So, I mean, it's not, we see it a lot on the west coast of Florida, so it's not new to Florida.
Okay.
What we don't know at this point is how quickly it might expand and whether or not it'll take up that available space that seagrass maybe would be able to recruit back into, whether or not it's going to be competitive with seagrass. So, question mark right now, but we're going to definitely keep an eye on it.
Cool.
And then the last thing I just want to mention really quickly is we just completed our final sampling for seed distribution throughout the lagoon. We sampled sediments at 70 different sites to try to get a good idea of where we were seeing the most seagrass seeds. We were particularly targeting Halidulea iridii and Rupia maritima, two of the most common species we see out there. This is very preliminary data. It's done in collaboration with DEP and Florida Institute of Technology, and we are seeing seeds distributed throughout all 70 sites. A lot more Rupia seeds than Halidulea seeds, but we are finding Halidulea throughout the lagoon, particularly in the area where we've seen some seagrass recovery in the northern lagoon and southern Mosquito Lagoon, and then in other areas further south of Sebastian Inlet where we've also seen some recovery. This central area here, Cocoa through Melbourne, is where we're seeing the least amount of Halidulea seeds, and that is an area where we are seeing recovery really lagging behind. So this is also to be continued. We do have to process the data from our spring sampling, and hopefully we'll have that final report out within the next couple of months. And that's all I have for you today. I'd be happy to take questions.
Members, any questions? Any questions from the public? Morning, thanks. That's
Thank you so
exciting.
much.
So, all right, now we'll move to the Southern Lagoon and Dr. Melanie Parker with the South Florida Water Management District. Good morning.
Good morning, board members and everyone. Go ahead and get started. As he said, this will be an update on conditions in the southern Indian River Lagoon, and it's going to be primarily focused in the St. Lucie estuary where our monitoring sites are. First off, we'll start with this figure that shows total daily inflows into the St. Lucie estuary from each of the basins. And this goes back a few months, and you can see the bright blue color indicates flows that were coming from Lake Okeechobee. And this was part of the Lake Okeechobee recovery operations that the Army Corps implemented early in December of last year. And this was an effort to lower lake levels before we head into this upcoming wet season. So because conditions got dry in March and April, they were able to stop those releases to the St. Lucie estuary as of the end of March. And so you see since that period of time, we've had very little inflow into the estuary. In fact, the table on the bottom right shows the averages for each of those basins, and the total inflow was only 81 CFS over the most recent week, and that all came from the tidal basin. So on this slide, we can look at how that's affected salinities. The map on the right shows the location of our 3 continuous salinity monitoring sites in the estuary, and the table on the top left is showing the most recent week's average salinity at those sites. So at HR1, which is in the North Fork of the estuary, salinities were about 16 on the surface and 19 on the bottom. At the US 1 bridge, salinities were about 22 on the surface and bottom, and at the A1A bridge, salinities were 30 on the surface and 32 on the bottom. And to put this in perspective, we compare this to the salinity performance measure that was developed by the Recover program as part of SERP, where we look at optimal salinities related to adult oysters as they're an indicator species for us. 10 to 25 has been determined to be the optimal salinity range for oysters. And so the good news is HR1 and US 1 bridge salinities are in that optimal range for oysters. And that is perfect timing because we are heading into the beginning of their spring spawning season this year. At the A1A bridge, salinities are just a bit higher than that range, and this usually means that they'll just have increased predation rates and potentially more disease. So this figure on the top left is just showing salinity again, but this is the mean daily salinity at those 3 sites, and you can see that since those releases from the lake stopped, and the dry weather we've been having, those salinities have increased steadily over the past month. The figure on the bottom is showing water column salinity, which is an average of the surface and bottom at the US 1 bridge site, which is located most closely to our main oyster site in the estuary. And the green band indicates that optimal salinity range of 10 to 25. So you can see that even though salinities have been climbing, it's still within that optimal range. And this figure is showing the latest oyster recruitment data as measured by FWC in the estuary. It's showing the past couple years, but if we zoom in and look at 2024, we can get a feel for what we should expect this year. The first indication of the new spring spawn was shown in April, where we saw an average of 1.3 spat per shell. We haven't yet seen that start this year, but they do collect this data monthly, and we will get the new data within the next couple weeks. So we're hoping to see spat settlement has started in the St. Lucie estuary, especially since conditions are ideal for it right now. And lastly, I have a slide to present some results from our long-term transects for seagrass monitoring. The map on the left is showing the northern extent down to the middle of our area, and then it continues to, on the map on the right, down to Jupiter Inlet. And this area that we survey is broken into segments, which are indicated by the different colors on the map. And so that data is shown in the figure by color. Also, the white dots indicate the location of those long-term transects in each section, and there's about 4 to 5 in each of those segments. So the key things that we found out, in all segments, the dominant species is haliduli or shoalgrass, except for one, and that is segment 25, the blue segment near Hope Sound. In that segment, the dominant species is Halophila. It's paddlegrass, so it's a smaller, it's not a canopy-forming species. The other thing that we wanted to point out was from moving from 2023 to 2024, we can see that percent cover increased in all segments except one, and that's the lavender segment, number 26. But then we look at number 23 where we had the greatest increase. And that's primarily due to an increase in Haladuli percent cover. In 2023, the average was about 3%, and we went up to 16% in 2024. So that's really good news for that segment. And that's all I have today, unless there are questions.
Members, any questions? Anyone from the public? All right. Thank you, Doc.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right, moving on to presentations. This will be an update on the progress from each of our Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act grant award recipients, which we funded 5 seagrass nurseries, 1 in each county. So we'll start off with Tyler Provenchip. Let me, I got that right? That was first. That's how they got it listed. I'm sorry. If y'all want to switch, that would be fine.
I'm happy to go first. Hi, I'm Tess Taylor-Tynes. I represent Marine Discovery Center up in New Smyrna Beach. I'm the Conservation Science Coordinator, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the northernmost partner in the Seagrass Nursery Network. So when the RFQ came out from the IRL NEP, MDC had had almost 10 years of experience with successful restoration projects that came from both public and private funding opportunities. Mostly working on shoreline and oyster reef restoration, and so this opened up the opportunity to approach seagrass clam operations with the potential for growth in the future, so perhaps oysters, other submerged aquatic vegetation. So when we received funding, we also didn't have any infrastructure in place, so you'll kind of see throughout that that was our main focus within the last couple of years. First of all, we needed to create partnerships. As a newer partner within this effort, we started working with University of Florida, Todd Osborne at Whitney Lab, and we also partnered with Mike Sullivan of Premier Seafood, who has a long history of clamfish operations, mainly focused on commercial, but then he has recently kind of switched his operations to focus on restoration efforts. We then created the infrastructure itself, so construction of 16 raceway tanks. We have a flow-through system that required a dock that can pump lagoon water directly into those tanks. The preliminary tanks have the clams in them that we partner with Mike for, and then that water flows into the seagrass tanks after being primarily filtered by those shellfish. We are now focused on the last 2 items that you see on this slide, which are creating our seagrass and clam stock. There are a lot of conversations within the Seagrass Nursery Network into some of the permitting availability of these items and working to make sure that we're paying attention to regional availability, genetics, as well as regional needs for the field applications themselves. And then finally, all of the work that Marine Discovery Center does really focuses on that community engagement aspect. So every single part of the process, from building the shade cloth over the tanks to daily operation and maintenance of both the tanks and the seagrass species, all the way to eventually helping us collect those species, and then of course deploying those species, we're hoping to get the community involved. So what you're seeing here is a flyover of the infrastructure that was created with those first couple years of funding. We are interested in building capacity for the regional needs of our restoration practitioners. Those can be outside of Marine Discovery Center. It can be independent projects led by Marine Discovery Center, but really leaning on those partners and research folks to help us understand where seagrasses are recovering, where they're not recovering, and how to best approach that restoration. Of course, we're increasing understanding not only through that community aspect, but also the Seagrass Nursery Network has provided an awesome opportunity for data and knowledge sharing across not only the 5 partners, but beyond. We're working with partners on the west side of the state as well to help us have a really cohesive understanding of how our seagrasses are performing, especially in the context of restoration. Additionally, like I mentioned, that public outreach is really important. We saw some pretty dramatic die-offs and things happening within the Indian River Lagoon system, and so the public is interested in terms of how they can help, what we're doing about it, and this has been a really good kind of booster for those efforts. So what you're seeing in this flyover, I didn't actually identify it. You'll see the pump dock that's pumping water into those 16 raceway tanks. And then we had some low-lying areas on campus that were already established, and we also did some earthwork to establish the effluent pond that you're seeing right here. So we have 12,000 gallons an hour coming out of those seagrass tanks, and while we could have driven that directly back into the lagoon, this was a really good opportunity for us to create a staging area for those different species, also other materials that we would use for restoration, your grasses, your mangroves. But it's been an incredible educational tool as well for the different programs that we offer on MDC campus. Finally, for the next couple of funding years, we have definite focus to kind of start implementing what we've done at the nursery level. Of course, in increasing understanding and talking with our partners, we want to make sure that the co-restoration efforts that we're providing in our region have long-term benefits, and we kind of increase understanding around that. Of course, we need to start moving the nursery items once they've grown out to the optimal growths for the specific sites. We're going to start moving those to the sites that are needing that restoration. And then finally, as I mentioned, really supporting the regional needs of those restoration practitioners and furthering the work that MDC does within the realm of conservation. Thank you.
Any questions? Sounds like a lot of busy and good stuff going on there.
Yes, yes, but all good.
All
Thank
right,
you.
well, let us know. All right, Tyler, come on up.
Good morning, my name is Tyler Provancha. I'm a conservation manager with Restore Our Shores, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing with our 2 nurseries and kind of where we're going next steps, all that kind of stuff. So we currently have 2 nurseries, one in Melbourne Beach and one in Rockledge. Where most of what we're growing is shoalgrass or haliduli, just kind of like what some other people have mentioned, but we're also growing a little bit of Syringodium. And the biggest kind of goal with these, both of these nurseries is to grow out seagrass for our experimental pilot plantings in the Indian River Lagoon. In 2025, we've currently planted 5,000 shoots so far to do a comparison study looking at how haliduli interacts with Caulerpa prolifera, the macroalgae that Lauren mentioned in her previous presentation. And we're hopeful to do an additional 1,000 shoots planted later this month to kind of expand out that project to also incorporate a microbe component, and all of that work is in partnership with Moat Marine Lab, UCF, and Florida Tech as well, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. Besides for the actual plantings out in the Indian River Lagoon, we are also focused on doing a variety of research, both on-site and off-site. We currently have 2 projects that are being done in partnership with Florida Tech to use some of the seagrass that we've grown through our projects to experiment with different sediment characteristics as well as fertilizers in order to try to optimize the kind of grow out of seagrass that we're doing in the nursery to hopefully increase our output. And we're doing those projects either in a lab setting or in mesocosms at some of the other nursery partners that we work with because our nursery is kind of full at the moment, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then the final kind of thing that we currently have ongoing is the 1-year monitoring of the plantings that we did last year out in the Indian River Lagoon. We did we did 5 different site locations last year to test some different questions with density and herbivory exclusion devices and what kind of method works best for our portion of the lagoon. And we're happy to talk a little bit more about those results once I can kind of process some of that data. So the middle photo is our nursery at Hubs Research Institute, where we've partnered with them to build out a nursery. And this is where we get most of our actual seagrass for outplanting. It's mainly built for production. And as you can see, the grass looks pretty happy. That photo is from early February. And basically, the goal with these raceways is to use for planting, but on the left, there is a picture of some of our research tanks where we're hoping to test different questions. We currently have 6 of those at our nursery, and they're all being used by UCF for the Caulerpa manipulation experiments that I kind of mentioned. We're doing a mesocosm test in a controlled setting where we can kind of get some answers that can hopefully inform some of our field plantings. And then Florida Tech is doing a piece to look at the sediment and kind of hopefully get a holistic kind of question of, is Caulerpa helpful for haliduli outplantings or is it harmful, or kind of examine that relationship a little bit more. And our other nursery is in Rockledge, in partnership with Rockledge Gardens, a local plant nursery. The capacity of that nursery is a lot smaller, but our hope with those, with that is to get it up to the same kind of level of production as our other nursery as we go into the summer. So next steps and kind of the things that I'm really excited about. The photo on the left and the photo on the top right are a photo of a male haliduli flower and a fruiting body on a haliduli plant, which were both found in our nursery, which we're super excited about because it means that the conditions in our nursery were conducive to actually promote a flowering event. We went in late April and did a monitoring to try to estimate the number of flowers that we were actually finding in the nursery, and we found, just doing a subsection of our grow out tanks, we found 64 male flowers. We've also found multiple female flowers. They're just a lot harder to identify and a lot harder to photograph, so I don't have any photos here. But my kind of hopeful next step is partnering with Florida Tech and other partners to look at some of the, to do some stress test experiments with some of the sensor data that we have in order to see if we can recreate the flowering event that we saw in our nursery in a lab setting, so we could hopefully work towards getting consistent flowering or germination and things like that. Other things that we're hoping to do as we kind of go into this summer and beyond is the establishment of a 3rd nursery, as well as kind of building that nursery to help expand our research mesocosms to hopefully use them to answer more questions. And then taking some of the data that we already have for publications. We currently have 3 papers in the works in various steps, in various stages of the process, and we're hoping for all the data that we're collecting now to hopefully kind of guide our next experimental plannings for 2026. And that's really all I have, so if you have any questions, happy to answer those. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Tyler, you may not remember me, but about 3 years ago, I got a group together and we volunteered at the Brevard Zoo to put the wire baskets together. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to thank you for your patience with your volunteers and your dedication to still be here.
I mean, we can't do it without our volunteers. Yeah. Like, genuinely, they're some of the most helpful people. And I mean, even the nurseries that I've talked about, I didn't even go into it, but both of our nurseries, like, the goal is that volunteers help us maintain them. They're out there every week helping clean stuff off, take water quality measurements. Again, can't do it without them.
You actually told our group that we did more baskets in the time period than the FIT girls lacrosse team.
All right. Tyler, thank you. Sounds like a lot of good stuff going there. We're on a roll here.
Thank you.
So everybody that's the next few that are in, I hope they're matching up to what the first 2 have talked about. All right, Krista McCoy, Director of Conservation and Research with the Florida Oceanographic Society. She gets extra credit. Okay.
Hi, nice to be here. At Florida Oceanographic Society, we have a mission to cultivate and inspire stewardship and conservation through education, advocacy, and research. I'm the Director of Research and Conservation, and I wanted to talk to you today specifically about the work that we're doing associated with the Seagrass Network and our bill funding. As part of our mission, I'm going to use this for people. As part of our mission in education about the Indian River Lagoon, we have this beautiful lagoon aquarium. And it's 750,000 gallons. It has sharks and rays and all kinds of really cool fish. The water comes from the Atlantic Ocean and flows into our aquarium and then over this berm and into this meadow of seagrass. And so we call this our wet lab or our seagrass grow-out meadow. It's 500 square meters, and it allows us to have a space where we can take our seagrass from our nursery tanks that I'll talk to you about in just a second and put them in this meadow and do experiments on transplantation stress. We also have this 9 different raceway tanks that get water flow from the mangroves. And so this water that comes into these tanks is completely different from the water that we get from our Gamefish Lagoon. We also have this experimental array of tanks that are currently being rebuilt in our what we call back of house. But today what I wanted to draw your attention to are the 34 tanks that we have in what we call our front of house. Our front of house nursery has been refurbished due to the bill funding and our work through the nursery network. We've refurbished the tables and tanks. We've replaced all the sediment that was being used. We replanted the plants into the sediment directly, and rather than planting them in plastic boxes. We've added electricity to this system. So now we're poised to start to investigate how adding more environmental realism into our nursery can facilitate both transplantation stress reduction. So how can we move these plants into the wild and have them survive better. And we can also increase, hopefully, our productivity by adding realism. And so one way that we're adding realism is with wave makers. So if you go into natural seagrass meadows in the world, there's a lot of water movement. So these places are tidal and they're very dynamic. But in our seagrass tanks, the water just trickles in and it just trickles out. And so we want to increase that water movement and make it more realistic. We're also adding other organisms into our tanks to help decrease the algae that grows on the grass. So those are the kinds of things that we're working on now. Ultimately, what we're interested in doing is asking if that environmental realism that we use in our nursery can help make those plants more resilient when we transplant them. And also we're interested in whether or not those factors can induce more flowering. So this is a picture of our old tank setup where we had these plastic bins, and you can see the water just trickling in. And now we're really focused on using the infrastructure funding to help us advance restoration science. One of our main questions is how to make the seagrass nurseries more efficient. And another question is how can we grow seagrass that's resilient to transplantation and natural stressors. And one of the ways that we investigate resilience is to begin with the knowledge that organisms have evolved complex and efficient mechanisms for sensing and responding to stress. And so at FOS, we're really focused on the idea of evolutionarily enlightened seagrass restoration. So we're interested in identifying the genetic profile of our seagrasses and doing it in a way where we're not just looking at whether or not the seagrass is genetically diverse, but what exactly are the genes that are driving resilience. And if we can do that, then we can identify different strains that will be resilient to different types of stressors. So we're super motivated to try to understand what genes drive resistance to stress, right? So I'm a seagrass and you throw some stress at me and I don't care. I'm going to keep growing. What strains can recover? So, you throw a stress at them, it knocks them back, but they come back. And then what strains are resilient? And that's based on the speed of recovery. So that's the slope of the line of recovery. If we can identify what genes are associated with these different things, then we can intentionally plant different strains in different areas. So over the next 2 years of funding, we want to leverage the strengths of specific strains to increase seagrass recovery success and coastal resilience generally. That's all I have, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Fascinating. And seagrass stressors. That makes sense to me. All right. Next up, Richard Mulroy, Research Technician, Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute. Welcome, Richard.
Hi. Hi, I'm Richard Mulroy. I'm a research technician at Harbor Branch. I've worked on our seagrass nursery for the past 10 years. And I'm here representing Rachel Bruton, who's our PI on the project. She's at a conference this week, so she's unable to be here. So the Seagrass Nursery was founded in 2015 by Dennis Hanasak and his co-PI, Paul Wills, who's our Associate Director for Research at Harbor Branch and an expert in aquaculture design. It consists of large land-based tanks. We have a closed system using recirculated well water and an open system that uses flow-through IRL water. We're in the process of a large expansion funded by FWC and the Harbor Branch Foundation, which will include adding 24 additional tanks, which will give us a surface area of 330 square meters to produce seagrass for restoration efforts and experiments. We've had some success growing haliduli, Syringodium, rupia, and we're about to start an experiment in a couple weeks where we are going to plant in the lagoon and see how planting the multiple species together, what kind of interactions there are. And we're one of 5 of the IRL partner nurseries. So now let me talk about our portion of the building lagoon-wide capacity for IRL seagrass recovery through infrastructure investments. And that is the Harbor Branch Experimental Seagrass Nursery. The purpose of the nursery will to perform experiments to increase research restoration success. So over the past year, we've figured out where we're going to construct the nursery. We've had our construction plans approved. We've prepared the site. And then starting this year, we've had our slab poured and cured. The greenhouse has been erected in April. And we're currently just finishing off the electrical and plumbing work. And right on time, we'll have the greenhouse fully ready to go at the end of this month. So what are the critical next steps in the nursery? Well, that's going to be outfitting the nursery with mesocosms to perform our experiments. So we need to do all kinds of things like purchase tanks, electrical supplies, how are we going to plumb everything, install heating systems, aeration systems, monitoring devices to monitor pH, DO, light salinity. And so some of the things that our goals are to optimize productivity by manipulating light, nutrients, temperature, water flow, and circulation, optimize the frequency and magnitude of harvesting of planting units, explore genetic diversity, select strains, induce flowering, and produce seeds. Any questions?
Commissioners, any questions? All right. Outstanding. Thank you, Richard. All right, last but certainly not least, I'm sure, John Than, Director of Marine Aquaculture, Sea and Shoreline LLC. Welcome, sir.
Hi, thank you. My name is John Than. I am the Director of Aquaculture for Sea and Shoreline. First, want to thank the IRL Council and the NEP for letting us participate in this activity. I'm here to present on the, I'm sorry? The arrows. Oh. I'm here to present our nursery that we built and it's just south of, just north of Sebastian Inlet on the Hub SeaWorld old marina site. That is the new property that we are working with in partnership with Hub SeaWorld and CMAR to be called the Restoration Aquaculture Station. The size and capacity is 4 main structures currently housing 12 vats measuring 3,000 gallons, 32 by 8 by 2 feet deep, with the capability of holding 35,000 plants on each system, with the production capacity about 1 million plants a year with 2 harvesting. Basically, we grow the plants and harvest it and then let it grow back again so we can get that many plantings. So we actually are having permitted 500,000 plants to go out this year onto 97 acres. And let me get to you the information on where those plantings will be. So those plantings will be in the area of Preacher's Hole, Big Slough, Fort Pierce, Fort Walton Scrubs, and Titusville. We currently have planted 120,000 plants at Turker Cove. Current state and expansion. This is the location right here, and you can see the 2 buildings already built with the 12 vats. We're currently getting ready to build the other 2 greenhouses. These vats will hold 6 species. They actually already hold 6 species of seagrasses, minus Johnsoni, 2 Halophila, paddlegrass, stargrass, Thalassia, Syringonium, Haliduli, and Rupia. We also have 2 seasons of mangroves already growing there, red and white. Second phase of the construction should be finished by the end of this summer. And that would double the actual size of what we already have right now. Some of the innovations and needs that we have are facing. Some of the cool innovations we have is actually using a new type of planting bags that promotes root growth. It's a little bit different than a lot of technicians. So we actually put them in planting bags where the roots can grow and be established, and we give them nutrients so when we actually plant it in, the plants stay in the ground better. These are biodegradable bags, and so they won't stay around, but this is important because a lot of predation will come by and will rip up the plants, and once a plant is established into the area planted with the good roots, then they just get mowed over and then they can continue to grow. And the roots, use the nutrients to uptake and grow better. Another neat innovation that we came up with, this little bag unit right here. This actually has Rupia in it, but we were able to make this bag unit to actually put into a drone, working with Dr. Chow with Bethune-Cookman University. She approached us to see if we can do this, and we actually were able to fly these drones with these small bag units over to mosquito impoundments where most technicians can't get to because either the muck is too deep or it's too overgrown, but the conditions aren't good for people to go plant, but we need to eat the nutrients in that area and grow seagrasses. And so these drones were able to carry 100 plants at a time and drop these plants into these impoundments. This was done last month, so we don't have the results of how well the plants are doing right now. That's actually going to be, I think she's actually have her students going out this month to survey that. So as you can see up there, there's one of our planting units, and that's actually 12 inches of roots growing out of that bag. So it's really exciting. Another thing that we've actually accomplished too is to get flowering and seeding in our nursery. We've actually to date had over 10,000 Rupia seeds harvested from our nursery. We've actually given that out to the University of Florida and Dr. Chow and other partners to experiment with. We've actually used those seeds to germinate and restock our nursery as well. What's exciting about this is if you can put seeds out, it's actually more natural for it to grow its roots and grow out. The predators won't see them, so they have time to establish strong roots and grow and healthier. And at the same time, we can cover a lot of grounds. If we were to encapsulate these seeds so they would have weight, we can put them in a drone and fly them over the entire Indian River Lagoon. As to date, it's rupia. I think we saw some hallelujah flowering, but I can't confirm that. But we also have something really unique right there. I think it's the first time Thalassia has actually flowered in a nursery, and that's that picture up there. Thalassia is really neat. It's a true carbon sequestering seagrass. So this is the plant that we want to try to establish eventually in the long run. It's a great stabilizer and like I said, a true carbon sequester. So what we found is in our process is we need plants. We need more plants. We need more plants. We need more plants. Currently, our issues is there's only certain ways to get plants, and that's through certain permits, rack permits to grab dead, or not dead grass, but uprooted grass from the environment. And then we go through that, clean that, and then replant them, or mitigation where they're, seabed's going to be impacted, and we have to go in and get the grass from it before it's impacted, and to put back in our nursery, and special activity permits to establish nursery, plant nurseries. But the wording is not indicative for us technicians to go get that. It's a lot of agencies putting different rules in place. And so one of the things I would like to ask is to have the council and people talk to the other agencies to work together to understand that, we're trying to restore this area. We need to get the plants to restore this area. And even the wordings for our in-grass nursery, which we're applying for permits for, to actually take acres where we can grow grass into the water, the wording makes it very difficult for us to establish in situ seagrass nurseries. And the other thing too is permitted, getting agencies, getting cities to permit areas to put out plantings. We know the need for the IRL is to put more plants out. The plants is going to fix the water. The solution is dilution. But if no one's actually actively trying to find areas to plant and put the plants out, we're just growing plants for what reason? We need to do that now. There's a lot of research being done right now. A lot of our partners are finding better ways to put the plants out, to have them established. But at some point, the answer is actually putting more plants out, more plants, more plants, more plants. So, but that's what I have. If you have any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
Okay.
All right, sounds
thank
great.
you.
Thank you, John. Thank you. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to 8, the IRL NEP Management Conference Committee reports. And we'll start off with the Management Board report from Beth Powell, who is Indian River County's Conservation Lands and Parks and Recreation Director. She has a lot of things to do, and she does them very well. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing us to be here and report today. So on Tuesday, May 6th, the Indian River Lagoon Council Management Board convened next door at the Sebastian Elementary School, historic Sebastian Elementary School. Our meeting began promptly at 10:15 a.m. There were 21 members who attended in person and 11 members online. We also had 11 guests in person and 5 online guests as well. The meeting was called promptly to order at 10:15 a.m. We had no agenda revisions, and so the meeting moved forward with a finance subcommittee report from Stu Glass, and the board accepted the committee's report. We received both of the water quality presentations that you had this morning, presented by Lauren Hall and Cherry McCorkle. And then we received similar presentations from the 5 different groups reporting on the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program, Seagrass Nursery Networks. There were some good conversations and some good discussions that came from that. In particular, we talked a little bit about the genetic diversity in the nursery materials, permitting constraints for restoration projects, flowering and seeding studies, and the things that they were seeing from the nurseries, and the differences experienced with flow-through versus recirculated systems. So those conversations were very good, and considering how many guests we had that day, I think that the management board was acting in a capacity similar to STEM. So I think that's something I'm seeing is where we're getting a lot of guests, but the same information is being provided, and a lot of good discussion is occurring from the group. There was no old business to discuss, and the meeting moved forward with our new business items. The following items were unanimously approved. Dan was the star of the show and presented 4 different action items for us. First, beginning with the audit report for fiscal year 2024, which was unanimously approved, and the board is recommending that the board of directors adopt the audit report. Dan then presented the fiscal year 2025 Priority Communities RFP. After some discussion, the management board unanimously recommends to the Indian River Lagoon Council Board of Directors that they accept the IRL NEP Management Conference recommendations and that they approve the final ranked list of proposals, and then further fund the top 5 projects contingent and consistent with available funds and budgetary authority. Through the same motion, the board further recommends that the board of directors authorize staff to negotiate and enter into contracts and agreements with those applicants. In that same motion, I should note that the management board also recommends using the balance of the funds left over in the amount of $356,894 toward the balance for the boat purchase and also dispersed throughout the Seagrass Nursery Network funded projects. This decision, and one of the reasons it was decided by the board, was that the decision does not result in a 2025 work plan amendment or any adjustments that might be cumbersome. From there, Dan presented the 2025 Small Grants Project, noting that high and low scores were dropped. After some discussion, the management board unanimously recommends that the Indian River Lagoon Council Board of Directors accept the NEP Management Conference recommendations, approve the final ranked list of proposals, and fund the top 7 projects for a total of $32,410 using available funds as needed, contingent and consistent with available funds and budgetary authority. The motion included a recommendation for staff to negotiate and enter into contract agreements with those awarded recipients. The last item Dan presented was the fiscal year 2026 final budget. The management board unanimously recommends the Indian River Lagoon Council Board of Directors accept the NEP Management Conference recommendation to approve the fiscal year 2026 final budget by resolution 2025-02. And from there, we received reports from community engagement, information tech and data science, the project update, and the executive director's report was presented by Kathy. Final comments from the members and the public concluded our meeting at approximately 12:30 p.m. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And I hope I got that right. Okay, good. We had a lot of business to discuss, so I was trying to make sure we covered it.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
You are very welcome. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Jacoby, the STEM Advisory Committee.
Morning. Thank you. Chuck Jacoby with the Florida Flood Hub, Chair of the STEM Advisory Committee. We likewise met on Tuesday in the afternoon. We, through consent agenda, approved the minutes from our last meeting, which was in February. We recommended approval of the FY 2026 final budget, recommended acceptance of the FY 2024 audit report, and then we moved on to hear presentations about water quality and seagrass, like you've heard, and then took a look at the recommendations and rankings for the priorities communities projects. And the decision was to proceed as proposed and to take the remaining funds, which were mentioned by Beth, and to use those to go back to a project that was in the water quality RFP earlier, which is the Port St. Lucie septic sewer work, to then top up the budget for the boat, and then to take any remaining funds and distribute those to the seagrass projects you've heard about with criteria determined by staff. We then took a look at the small grant proposals and recommend that you proceed as proposed and fund all 7 projects using available funding to top up any shortfall. We heard updates on staff activities, wished Dwayne well in his challenges, announced our next meeting, and adjourned at 3:30.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Doc. Let's move on to the Citizens Advisory Committee. Captain Frank Catino. Oh, you're going to do that too? Okay.
I'm Frank today. Tess Taylor-Tynes, I'm the co-chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee. We met last Thursday, May 1st, starting at 1 p.m. We started with the minutes approval, no agenda revisions during our meeting. We heard from Heather Stapleton, the Central Indian River Lagoon Community Engagement Coordinator, about my plastic diet and looking at reducing uses of single-use plastic, reusing before recycling. Some good conversations around that as well, and the actions that we can all take in those spaces. In the realm of new business, which is going to be today's agenda item 11, 11A for today was the independent audit report for fiscal year 2024. The CAC motion to recommend that the IRL Board of Directors accept the management conference recommendation to adopt the audit report. Moving to 11B, we had the fiscal year 2025 priority communities RFP. Excuse me. There was a motion to recommend that the IRL Council Board of Directors accept the management conference recommendations, approve the proposals that were ranked 75% or higher, with the remaining funds to be distributed to the Seagrass Nursery Network partners. Contingent and consistent with available funds and budgetary authority. And we also authorize staff to negotiate and enter into contract agreements with those top applicants. For 11C, we have the 2025 small grants presented also by Daniel. We, as the CAC, motion to recommend that the IRL Council Board of Directors accept the management conference recommendations. To approve the top 7 proposals that were ranked and fund these proposals contingent and consistent with available funds and budgetary authority. We then authorize staff to negotiate and enter into contract agreements with those applicants. And there were some discussions on funds that would be used for making sure that those top 7 projects could be used, could be funded using remaining funds from leftover budget. Finally, 11D on today's agenda was the fiscal year 2026 final budget. The CAC unanimously motioned to recommend that the IRL Council Board of Directors accept the management conference recommendation to approve the fiscal year 2026 final budget by resolution 2025-02 pursuant of Florida statutes. We then also heard about the impressive staff reports, community engagement update. There's some really cool statistics coming out of the work that the different CECs are doing. There's some really cool work being done on the IT side of things, making sure that the IRL NEP website is representing all of the awesome work that's being done through those project funds. Daniel had the task of presenting an IRL project update. Like I mentioned, there's lots of work being done. There's over 50 projects that they're managing that he reported on. And then finally, yes, the executive director report from Kathy. The CAC also, of course, wishes Dwayne speedy recovery and good health in the coming future. We adjourn the meeting at 2:45 p.m. and the next meeting will take place in August. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks.
All right, Commissioners, we're going to do the consent agenda and old business, and then we'll take a break and come back for new business. So let's go to number 9, the consent agenda, approval of the February 14th, 2025 Board of Directors meeting with a motion to add to the consent agenda the addition of Mike Johansson on the Management Board and Finance Subcommittee. So I entertain a motion. So moved. Have a motion by Commissioner Hurd, second by Mr. Oliver. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, let's take 10 minutes and we'll come back and start under new business. The meeting back to order. We'll move it on to item 11, new business, the independent audit report for fiscal 2024. And I'll turn this over to Dan.
All right, good morning, everybody. Just wanted to introduce our auditors from Carr, Riggs & Ingram. This is Christine Knoll-Rand, and she'll be giving you an update on the audit report. I'll come back after she's done and answer any questions if you all have any, and talk about any findings or anything of that nature. Just to kind of give you an idea too, during this process of doing this audit, we're also under an EPA Office of Inspector General audit that I've been going through since December, so a lot of audit work this past few months.
Good morning. As Daniel mentioned, I'm Christine Knoll-Rand. I'm the audit partner that oversaw your engagement. So in front of you, you should have the bound copies of the financial statements. If you want to follow along, you can. I'm going to start on page 19. So you did get a clean audit opinion. That's the audit opinion that you want over your financial statements. If you're looking at page 19 and we were to compare it to last year, your revenue did decline from last year. You had some state grants that finished up in the prior year, so you didn't have that revenue again this year. And your expenditures were up because of septic to sewer conversions that happened in the current year. So you used $737,000 of your fund balance. That's not a bad thing to say that you used it. Those member contributions are not going to come in always the same year that you spend them. So using it isn't a bad thing. If you want to know financially how are we doing, are we stable? I mean, you're a government entity, but are we on the brink of bankruptcy? The easiest way or better way to look at it is if you actually turn back 2 pages to page 17. You have an unassigned fund balance of $2.1 million. So that's basically like your reserves, what's left over. If you were to take your expenditures and look at it in a monthly basis, you have 7 months worth of expenditures sitting there in your reserves. So the Government Finance Officer Association recommends having at least 3, so you're above that. Since you do more longer term projects, you're not really the same as a county or a city that's funding it in the same year, so you probably want a little bit more, but financially you're sound. We also have to go through a financial condition assessment and checked all of your trends and everything, and you were not a concern, is what they call it, so you're not a deteriorating financial condition. So just because you've used some of your fund balance, that's not any concern or alarm. If you want to flip back to page 56, this is kind of the summary of the results of everything. So we do a financial statement audit and a single audit. So the single audit is compliance with your grants. So since you spent over $750,000 of grant funds in 1 year, you need a single audit. So at the top section, it says no's. The no's are actually good. That means we didn't have any financial statement findings for your financial statements. So we had some findings last year. Daniel and his team worked very hard to clear those. And then for the single audit, we have 3 findings. One thing that's different for the single audit, we have to check compliance and controls. So for your financial statements, we just have to make sure they're right. I don't have to test your controls. In the grant world, I have to make sure there's a control plus the compliance. So that first finding there, it's on reporting, but really it's just trying to make sure we have proper documentation. The EPA verbally told Daniel that he didn't need to file some of the reports that were written in the grant agreement. He never got it in writing, so I couldn't say it was okay that he didn't turn those reports in. He subsequently turned them in because the OIG said you need to turn them in. So they've already been sent in and fixed. So we just talked with Daniel about if they verbally tell you something, try to follow up with an email, get them to confirm and respond so you have it in writing to prove that they told you that you didn't necessarily have to do it till the end. For the next one, it was for suspension and debarment. So we had this finding last year, but because it's something that happens all throughout the year, by the time we come in, the year's already halfway over for your next year. So we did still see improvement on it. So you have to check that all the vendors you give the grant funds to are not suspended or debarred before you pay them. So all the vendors that were new towards the end of the year, we already saw the controls in place and it's being done properly. We just couldn't for the first half because we didn't find it last year till the year was over. So I expect that to go away next year as you'll have more time. And you didn't give any funds to anyone that was suspended or debarred. There was no compliance or question costs along with that. The third one is subrecipients. That's checking and monitoring that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So last year, there wasn't really a check to try to get audit reports for them to make sure their auditors didn't find anything. Daniel did request them. Some of them, the 24 report wasn't done yet for them, so they didn't provide anything. So we just recommended to Daniel that he at least ask for the most recent that is available. So if timing-wise, the current year isn't, try to get the prior year. But for the ones that we sampled, he did already have the reports for half of them. So there was still improvement made on that finding, even though it wasn't completely cleared. So you didn't spend anything incorrectly. So there's no question cost for any of these findings. So there's no, was the money spent wrong? These are all based on controls to make sure you don't end up with any non-compliance. Does that make sense? Anyone have any questions I can answer?
Any questions? None? None at all? Staff, any questions or comments? Okay. All right, with that, unless nobody has any further questions or comments, I'll accept a motion to accept the audit report.
Second.
Who, Kel? Okay, Mr. Oliver, motion to accept, second by Commissioner Hurd. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to B, fiscal year 2025 Priority Communications RFP. Dan, it's all yours.
So kind of remind everybody where we were with this category for RFPs. Once we got the IIJ funding, the prior administration had a mandate to direct some of these funds to priority communities. When we put this together, we said, we want to be strategic in identifying which communities these go to, and we used a socioeconomic basis. And then, we were strategic that anything that they wanted to do had to tie to the CCMP, had to be Indian River Lagoon focused. And so we put together a task force to help develop this program, put out a two-phase proposal process, so letter of intent. That was in the fall. We had 10 respondents. 9 of the 10 respondents were recommended to submit a full proposal. Once we got our full proposals in, we actually only received 6 from the 9. So 3 of them, I said, where's your proposal? What's going on? They said, well, we're either not ready or our priorities don't align with yours. We said, okay, that's fine. Those 6 proposals were then reviewed by our committee. This was also the largest review committee we've ever had. We usually only have 11 or 13 reviewers. This was 17, so a very thorough review process. Out of the 6, 5 of them were ranked high enough above the 75% threshold, as shown here. And I'll give you a little background on each of these projects just so you have an idea of what they are. So the top ranked proposal came from the Education Foundation of St. Lucie County to do a Marine and Oceanographic Academy called MOA Discovery Magnet at Francis K. Sweet. This program is designed to educate, engage, and empower students and their families in the restoration and management of the Indian River Lagoon. Through hands-on science-based curriculum, interactive lab experiences, and immersive field studies, this program will cultivate a new generation of informed environmental stewards. The program will establish a discovery lab, an interactive learning space with touch tanks, microscopes, water testing equipment, and students will participate in grade-specific experience, including boat tours, seining, and citizen science projects where they will collect and analyze real-time data on the health of the lagoon. The second ranked project came from Brevard Zoo to empower high school students in priority communities. This one is funding a new program that will engage high school students in Cocoa, Melbourne, Palm Bay, and Titusville to encourage a deeper connection to the lagoon and improve water quality conditions through community involvement. Each participating school will receive 2 classroom-based workshops, a hand-on environmental science kit for use in restoration, and field trip to Restore Our Shores restoration sites throughout the lagoon. The third ranked project comes from the Boys and Girls Club of St. Lucie County. This is a program called Indian River Lagoon Defenders. They are going to teach members in grades 3 through 12 about the crucial role of the Indian River Lagoon and it plays in its community, and they'll participate in cleanup activities in a tributary called Moores Creek within Fort Pierce. The fourth ranked project comes from the Clean Water Coalition of Indian River County. This is working with the City of Vero Beach and the Economic Opportunities Council to identify at least 50 homesteads to do septic to sewer conversions within Area 11. It's a low-income area within the City of Vero Beach. And then the last project that's ranked for funding, it comes from Little Growers, Inc. This is a resilience and restoration project to implement nature-based solutions to mitigate flooding, restore critical habitats, and provide job training in sustainable food production and environmental restoration. They're going to partner with Florida Tech and the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council to establish an integrated multi-trophic aquaculture system with native tree plantings to improve ecological, social, and economic resilience. The last project, unfortunately, was below that threshold for funding, called the Peace Project. Just want to let you know that because even though this project was not ranked high enough, we would work with this partner, this applicant, as we do with all our applicants that don't receive funding, to go ahead and see what opportunities exist elsewhere, also provide them with assistance through grant writing, and try to get their project funded through a different source. And I'll be happy to answer some questions. As you can see here in the bottom, there is, based on the initial allocation of funds from this, there is $356,894 remaining. There's essentially two options that you could choose from, as mentioned from the committee reports, and I have outlined them here. This actually shows you all the review scores just so you can get an idea of how robust it was. All those red scores are highs or lows that were thrown out. One reviewer did fail to respond, so that's the black line. And you can see a couple conflicts. So these are your two options that don't require a major amendment, because this is federal funds, so we would have to do some kind of notification to EPA. If it was outside of something that was already not in the work plan, it would require a major amendment. These two options are projects or activities that are already included or yet to be included, like for our last fiscal year of the IIJA funding. We haven't submitted that work plan yet. But option one would be to take up that shortfall from our meeting back in February on the invitation to bid for the boat. We initially had budgeted with IIJ fund $60,000. The bid came in at $83,000. There was a little bit left over from another project that we could add to that, so the actual need is $17,858. And then you could fund the eligible project that was stranded back in February in Category 1, and that's listed here, the City of Port St. Lucie, with $300,000. That then leaves $39,035 remaining that could be split between the Seagrass Nursery Network. Option two, fully fund the boat, as mentioned, and then split that remaining $339,000 between the Seagrass Nursery Network. You saw there was a split decision between the committees. Did want to also note that the CAC wasn't given option one. At the time, it wasn't brought up, so they only had option two. So we're not sure exactly how they would have voted fully on that one. Any other option, like I said, would require a significant work plan amendment. And so happy to answer any questions to help you with your decision.
Commissioners, discussion? Questions?
Mr. Chair. I'm in support of option one on this.
Turn your mic on.
I'm in support of option one on this.
How was it ranked?
It was ranked eligible, so that project, the City of Port St. Lucie, it came in second. Back in February, we had the Brevard County Quick Connects ranked a little bit higher in the score, and so that one had all requested the entire allocation of funds to that category. That's why the next project was eligible, but not funded. There wasn't enough funds at the time. But now we have this opportunity.
Jeff?
Almost all the reports we heard this morning talked about seagrass and the need for more seagrass. Which, this puts you on the spot, but which would be more pressing, to give a lot more money to the seagrass nurseries or to fund the number two and option one?
I mean, this is my personal opinion, because I don't want to sway you at all, but you know, the root of the problem is nutrients, right? The whole system, lagoon system is nutrients. So it's not like the seagrass nursery isn't getting anything. They have quite a bit of money already. They'd still be getting a little bit more. You know, reducing nutrients is the priority this council set forth back in 2015. So that's my personal opinion, but that's just me, as Dan Colodny, not Chief Operating Officer.
Okay.
Dan, can you clarify again where the septic sewer conversion reduction project for the city of Port St. Lucie, where that ranked?
It was ranked second out of 5 or 4 proposals from in February. So this came up in February. They were ranked above that threshold, so they were considered eligible for funding, just not funded through that first process, because I remember we had a few other categories that had some leftover funds, but they still weren't enough to fully fund that project. And the council said, well, let's take that money and put it back in reserve instead of partially funding that. Now we have an opportunity to fully fund that.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah, and I guess my point is that they looked, that the ranking system has this as top of the, I mean, other than one ahead of it, top of the list.
Yes. Yeah, there is no other eligible project to fund from prior RFPs. All the other ones were below that 75% funding threshold. This was the only one that was considered eligible.
And how many connections does this fund?
This one would do about 100.
I'm always concerned about creating winners and losers, and this creates winners and losers. You know, everybody would like to have some help with their connection. I just don't know that this is the most equitable solution.
I mean, so we had discussed, well, could we just go ahead and reissue the RFP and see if we can get some more applications? It's such a time-consuming effort, and these funds are time-limited, so we're about to enter our final year. So unfortunately, there's really not, I mean, we could rush it, but we don't know about the quality of the projects we could possibly get. Unfortunately, it's not like our category 1, 2, and 3, which are all local cost share, council funded. This is IIJA, EPA. We have to allocate it somewhere. We can't just take it and put it in our reserves. We either use it or we lose it.
Chair, I would make a motion, we go with option 1, see if we get a second, and then discuss it
Second.
more.
Who was the second? I got a motion by Commissioner Brower, second by Commissioner Atkinson to accept option 1. All those in favor? Signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Sounds like motion passes unanimously for option 1. All right. That was item 1. Was that item 1 and 2 on this, on the agenda? That was just item 1? Okay, so we need to move to item 2. Okay, fund the top proposals contingent system with available funds. Is that correct? Okay. Available funds and budget authority and authorize staff to negotiate and enter into contracts with applicants. Okay. We're on the small grants, so that was 1 and, I'm just trying to get that straight. That was, the discussion was 1 and 2. Okay. So we're at C, 2025 small grants, correct? No, we're still at number 2.
Number 2.
Okay, number 2, okay. All right, Dan?
Number 2.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
over here.
Here
We actually need 2 votes for that.
we need 2 votes.
Yeah, the first one is to accept the ranked list, and then the
Okay.
second one is to allow us to enter into negotiations and fund those proposals. So
Okay,
we need a second motion on that.
So was the first motion and vote, was that applicable? Yes, no?
That was 2. So we need to approve.
Correct, yeah. You need to
Okay.
approve the rank list.
Okay.
Yeah.
We approve the rank list, okay.
Motion to approve the rank list.
Second.
Okay. I'm sorry.
1.
Motion? 1. Second. Motion by Mr. Oliver, second by Mr. Watkins. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, so now we're to C. Thank you. Requested action. Dan, go ahead.
All right, so this is our 2025 small grants program that was received. We received 14 proposals during this cycle, and you can see the scoring and ranking here. And so again, the red is kind of just the thrown out scores. The third column all the way to the right shows you those normalized rankings, and then kind of a running list of how the funding plays out. And you can see, you know, in project number 6 is kind of where the funding runs out. I'll just give you a little background on each of these projects. Orca is the top ranked, and they've been doing this One Health Fish Monitoring Citizen Science project for several years now. This next phase, they would be working with citizens and Embry-Riddle to analyze samples of oxybenzone in fish tissue. So this is kind of like the stuff you put on in sunscreen, and so they're looking at sunscreen exposure within fishes. The next project would be with the Smithsonian. This project is going to provide 400 attendance scholarships for 200 middle and high school students and 56 chaperones with the Boys and Girls Club of Fort Pierce and Frontline for Kids. They'll participate in after school and summer programs within the county at the county's marine ecosystem exhibit, doing some hands-on plankton discovery, some seining, other activities within the lagoon. The third ranked project is from Marine Resources Council. This is to expand their Lagoon Watch, which is a citizen science project, taking samples of the lagoon, testing it for certain water quality parameters. This is going to increase those kits to now include nitrate and phosphate testing. The fourth ranked project is from Brevard Zoo, their Lagoon Quest program. This is a program they've had for several years, and this will continue that program to engage Brevard County students with hands-on conservation and field-based study trips. Environmental Learning Center is ranked 5th with their 5th grade, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade at Title I schools field trips for them, where they can do planting of mangroves and learn about different species within the lagoon. And then where the funding kind of wraps up is in that Hub SeaWorld that I mentioned. This project is going to increase public awareness of fishing line impacts on wildlife and actions to reduce it. You can see there it's just under $2,410 to fully fund that project. And then the next project down, if you look at the scores, it was 78 and 77. And then I'm going to show you quickly on the next page, there's a kind of a break between the next project. That one's ranked at 72, so there's a 5-point difference there. The CAC and then all the committees recommended, you know, it's only another $5,000 to fully fund that 7th project, which is Project Plankton with MDC, which is to do a community science component through regular collection of water quality and plankton data by volunteers at the campus there. Because that break is down to 72 and there's 2 projects there tied, and then the next one's so close and the next one's so close, that would be almost an additional $20,000. So everybody kind of said that's a good natural break, so they were recommending to just fund those fully fund the 6th project and the next one. So it'd be $7,410 to fully fund all those 7 projects.
Commissioners, any questions? Okay, well, the request asks motion to accept the IRL NEP Management Conference recommendations, approve the final rank list of applicants, fund the top proposal, and authorize staff to negotiate and enter contracts. Item that staff recommendation 1 through 7.
So moved.
Second.
So a motion, who's second? Second by Mr. Clasby. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Item D, fiscal year 2026 final budget. Dan, you're on board again.
I'm on board again. So this is our final budget for the fiscal year 2026. There's not a whole lot of changes from our tentative budget that we saw back in February, and I'll just kind of highlight those here. This is what the entire budget looks like, and this is kind of the more telling slide here. This shows you where the changes were. Again, these are in roll-ups, so I'll go through a little bit more finer detail on what these changes are. But we're actually looking at a $15,000 decrease in other expenditures. Do want to point out there's no changes in revenue expected. We did talk with the EPA at their spring meeting to talk about, you know, is there any issues with the federal infrastructure and jobs law funding for the last year. They said nope, expect it to be coming in, and we're still base funding at 850, so we don't have the actual budget yet, but say go ahead and plan for 850. But like I said, we had $15,000 reduction in other expenditures. That is mostly due to a few line items. So within that, other expenditures is our strategic program, which is based on those RFPs that you all made decisions on back in February. So the tentative budget was based on full allocation to that. This now takes it to the actual based on those decisions for the RFPs. So we had a reduction in habitat restoration by 15,831 from 150. Our community base was also budgeted 125. We reduced it down by 104,000. And then we put 105,000 into our revenue unencumbered or reserve for the year. There was another small change within our EPA Section 320 work plan based on that science and innovation category RFP. So we had 200,000 initially allocated. 2 projects came in that left a surplus of 59,772. 57,000 of it was put into communications, and 2,000 of it was moved into travel. But the roll-up still stays at 850. And those are the only changes. So it, like I said, when you roll it all up, it ends up being a $15,000 decrease. When I was doing the tentative budget back in February, we really had to squeeze a lot of stuff, and I had reduced our legal cost to more of an actual. We always try to budget ahead in case there's any kind of litigation, kind of over budget for it. I felt with that 15,000 reduction, let's put it into that legal just in case of any kind of potential issue. So just giving ourselves that little bit of buffer. And that's it, no other changes.
Any questions? I think Dan's done a great job, but he's been really busy, like I said, not just with the budget, with everything else that's coming down the tracks, and he's handled it like a champion. And so I can't make a motion, so I'll entertain one on accepting the budget. Okay, motion by Commissioner Hurd, second by Commissioner Oliver to accept the final budget for fiscal year 2026. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Dan. All right, IRL NEP staff reports. Community engagement. Here comes Kathy.
Good morning. So I'm going to do the staff reports for communications and socials and our CECs. What you're looking at first here is our Facebook analytics for last quarter. So the graphic that you see there is all of last quarter and sort of where the hits were for Facebook. Overall, we had 158,000 views, a reach of 65,000, and interactions of about 4,000. So pretty decent. We're not complaining about that. Our top post, you can see on the right-hand side, was about history of the lagoon. That one garnered 29,000 views, was interacted with by almost 400 people, and we got 42 comments. This is what Instagram looked like last quarter. So again, the graphic shows all of Instagram for last quarter, and there's quite a few hits on it. And so those little peaks are sort of the peaks in interest in our posts. So overall, 19,600 views, a reach of about 3,000, and interactions of about 1,000. The top post was this one from UCF about the oyster volcanoes that they were making. And 1,300 views, reached about 939 folks, and got about 105 interactions. So from our CECs, we asked them now to provide us with 3 highlights from last quarter and give us something that's coming up in this quarter. So Jessie's highlights, she got to represent our program at the Tomoka Regional Science Fair and was a judge for that. So that was a really exciting evening. She enjoyed that a lot. She also assisted her partners and our partners with seagrass monitoring in Banana River Lagoon and Mosquito Lagoon. Throughout that whole quarter, she is reporting that the beds up there look pretty good at the points when she was out. Not sure what they're doing now with the Oreo Umbra bloom, but hopefully they stay looking good. Let's see. She also tabled at the 3rd annual STEM night at Sanford Middle School. So talked to about 150 kids and parents and did a salinity demonstration for them. So the kids got to do hands-on with water sampling and figuring out what the salinity of their samples were using refractometers. So everybody seemed to enjoy that. It was a really nice night. And because it's field season now, Jesse's going to be very busy this upcoming quarter working with partners to either be out monitoring or planting seagrasses and oyster beds, living shorelines, things of that nature. So she'll be in her happy place, and we are happy to have her out with our partners doing all of that. In the Central Lagoon, Heather had a really busy quarter. She represented us at the Surfrider Ballard Park dedication for the Ocean-Friendly Gardens. This, as you may recall, was a small grant we funded last year. So that got implemented this year, and they just had the dedication for that. Dan will show you a couple of pictures in his presentation because that was one of ours that closed this quarter. She also went to the 100th Save Our Indian River Lagoon project celebration. So the SORO program in Brevard County had their 100th project that got implemented, and they had a big celebration for that, and so Heather represented the program at that. And she also coordinated, and this was yeoman's work, coordinated our 2025 IRL Envirothon that we held right out here in Friendship Park behind the building. We had over 100 students, 10 teachers, and 62 volunteers. We brought in lunch and had set up and tear down, and it was a massive effort that, that Heather coordinated for us. And then on top of all of that, she gave a whopping 28 presentations in the second quarter, sorry. This quarter now, she gave a lecture at the Emerson Center, and I believe, Heather, is this open right now?
Until June 4th.
So the gallery that you're going to see next, the Indian River Lagoon by Brush and Lens, is open right now in Vero Beach at the Emerson Center. But Heather gave an opening night lecture for that, and some of our calendar photographers actually participated in this. So we have some calendar photos that are hanging in the gallery now. And then she's also co-teaching the Florida Master Naturalist Coastal Systems course with UF IFAS in Indian River County, so that is upcoming, and we can share that with all of you as well. Kalita, down in the Southern Lagoon, was also busy, and it's sort of redundant to even have to say that these guys are busy, so everybody was really busy. But this was a highlight for her. She's had this on her calendar for over a year to do Coffee with the Mayor in Fort Pierce, and she was able to talk to about 100 business owners and community leaders and kind of get our messaging out to that community. So that was a nice thing. She read to 120 fourth graders at 2 schools in St. Lucie County during Literacy Week and got the kids, I believe, to do some yoga. So we do, UCF developed an oyster restoration yoga class. And Kalita has been doing that around the county for us, so that's been really fun, and the kids enjoy it. So,
Could you demonstrate that for us?
Not me. You have to talk to Kalita about that. Let's see. She also assisted with some capacity building for 2 of our nonprofit partners. This would be the Friends of the Manatee Center in Fort Pierce. That's sort of a newish nonprofit that was recently established, and Little Growers in Palm Bay. So she's helping them with their programming and kind of getting established and building capacity for their programs. Let's see, upcoming this quarter, she's doing Spring Celebration in Jensen Beach at the Environmental Studies Center, and a Restoring the Village cleanup in St. Lucie County. That one is coming up pretty soon this month in May. And here are their overall metrics for the last quarter. So they went to 8 government meetings, they did 40 events, 34 presentations, attended 40 community meetings, were out in the field 12 times, and did about 37 outreach events. So again, busy, busy. And that is it for me for right now.
Thank you to all the coordinators. I know I see Heather everywhere up in Indian River County and others. So it's vitally important to get the word out through social media, through just being there and being in events. And I think we're doing a pretty good job with that.
Absolutely. It was really important to us when we hired the CECs to have a face in every community. And that's what we got. And it's been great.
Yes, thank you. KJ, Information Technology and Data Science.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so I'm just going to go over kind of what I've been doing this quarter. So I developed a portal for our NOAA monitoring forms. So our I'm forgetting the total amount for the NOAA funding right now. Pregnancy brain, $9.4 million grant. So basically keeping track of all of our monitoring forms that we need to submit from NOAA. It's automated completely, so we're not gonna have to chase people down, and it'll give them a red error if it's wrong. So it's kind of great in kind of automating that process. I wrote a One Lagoon webinar and hosting SOP, so kind of the back end development of how we host our host our webinars and how we have to do that whole process. I'm working with Chuck at the Flood Hub. We're going to be taking over and kind of hosting their Florida Flood Hub, just kind of where the flooding models are for the entire state. So we're transferring that from DEP, and the NEP is going to be hosting it and working with Chuck. I got certified as a master naturalist this quarter. This is my class. You can see me in the top right corner, so doing that outside of work. I also have been working with the Native Plant Society. I'm taking all of their courses, so to kind of help design with native plants and native landscaping. Also, I attended the IRL Symposium virtually, and we have a draft 2 for the website now. So hopefully this year we will get a new draft of the website, so it'll be easier to find things, just kind of easier, a little more friendly to use. Kathy's been my go-to for this, and so has ideas and marketeering. So that's kind of what I've been up to this quarter.
All right, any questions? All right, thank you, KJ. All right, Dan, IRL project update.
All right. Well, at the end of this quarter, we had 55 projects or activities in progress, and we wrapped up 2 small grants this past quarter. So I'll kind of give you just a little background on both of these small grants. The first one is Stella Maris Environmental Research, called Stella's EcoStars. It was a summer camp that helped 110 students or kids go to this. They got to do collections using seine nets, did some ID of the critters they caught in the lab, some paddleboarding, kayaking, taking field measurements, and doing beach cleanups. Just a few photos there. And the second one is the Surfrider Foundation of the Space Coast at Ballard Park. This is in Eagle River in Brevard County. They removed some invasives from that park and then planted 2 buffer zone gardens in that near the river. And you can see those pictures there. And that's all I have for a project update. As far as what I'm planning to do next quarter, I've been super busy with audit, as you all know. Do expect the OIG draft report to come to you next meeting. I did also learn from the boat retailer that the glass is being laid next week, so should expect to see the boat coming in at the end of June. So if any of you all want to go out and take a ride, get away from what you're up to and enjoy the river, I'd be happy to take you all out on the brand new boat. And too bad Doug's not here to hear it, but I had the exempted fishing permit from FWC this past quarter, so I got to catch my 6 red snapper. So just let them know. And my friend's got the new one, the fleet study, so I'm going some more.
Awesome. All right, thank you, Dan. All right, Executive Director report. Kathy, you're going to give us a brief update.
Very brief. Dwayne was super busy last quarter. He knew he was going to be in the hospital and out of commission for a while. And so he kind of front-loaded his activities and made sure that everything that he wanted to accomplish for this whole quarter and the third quarter got done before he went into the hospital. So he was unbelievably busy. We barely saw him for the whole second quarter. But these are some of his highlights. So February through May, first of all, he was honored as a Lagoon champion, and thank you, sir, for being there for that. The Clean Water Coalition of Indian River County hosted an event at Jones Pier on February 28th. They planted a tree in Dwayne's honor and had some really nice remarks, and it was a lovely afternoon. So I'll show you a picture from that in a second. I have a couple of pictures. Then next, most importantly, in March, he went up for a week to DC, where he attended not only the EPA spring meetings, but he attended an ANEP national meeting and did legislative briefings for the 2 senators from Florida, and also a bunch of House members, so he visited with a lot of folks. And did a presentation to the House Estuaries Caucus while he was up there in his copious amounts of spare time. He came home for a whole day, and then he went off to Tallahassee. From March 30th through April 3rd, he was up there for Florida Oceans Day and the Florida Ocean Alliance Board of Directors meeting. He did an introductory meeting with our new DEP secretary, and then dropped off packages at 24 legislative offices while he was up there. And again, he came back, and then the next day, he went out and he was the speaker at the IRL Music and Arts Festival for the Eau Gallie Arts District. So I'll just show you a couple of pictures from that. So this is from the Jones Pier event. There's Dwayne with Judy Orcutt and Mr. Ehrman and some other folks. And they did this really nice plaque that's on the building there for him with just some career highlights. And then these are his photos from Tallahassee, so you can see him there on the hill, and then giving the presentation to the House Estuaries Caucus. And then he also got to walk around with the Brevard County EDC folks. They invited him on their walk around, and so he did that as well. And then lastly, staff has been enjoying this slide a lot because it's sort of the tale of two Dwaynes. There he is in Tallahassee, and also in his everyman clothes talking to everyday people at the Eau Gallie Arts District. So that is his report for this quarter. And we're hoping to have him back in the chair for next quarter. That's it for me.
Okay, thanks. Yes, he is over getting treatment right now. I spoke with him on the phone last week, plus the video we had about this project. He's doing well. It's just tough. He's been through it before, and I'm sure he'll pull through. We will see him next quarter. So just keep him in your prayers and hope for the best. All right. Last but certainly not least, our council member reports. We'll start down here at this end with Mr. Watkins and work our way down as to what's going on in your neighborhood.
Well, I hate to bring it up, but I got to. So hurricane season is just around the corner. So I just want to advocate and do some housekeeping items, particularly with our local municipalities, our counties. A couple things, when the hurricane hits that we can be ahead of and be able to provide good service and response. So one is disaster debris management sites. I want to encourage all our local folks to get those pre-authorized. If they're not already pre-authorized, if you got new sites, start working on that now so then we can get them approved, and then if they have to be used, we just have to activate them. So your solid waste folks and staff do a really good job with that, but if there's need for more sites, start that process now. It's easier now than as the storms rolled through. The other thing is water tracker. So a big effort that the DEP does is report on and ensure water utilities, drinking water, and wastewater, what their status is, if there's any needs. Those are critically important infrastructure during a storm and after. So your utility directors, your operators, and your staff, if a hurricane's coming and a county is listed in the emergency order, which these days is pretty much half the state that occurs, even if direct impact does not happen to your county or your area, if you're in that named order, we have to go in and update each utility, drinking water and wastewater, on their status, needs, clear them out, basically turn your area from unknown or red to green, which is all clear. So I just want to encourage the more help we can get from your staff directly. They have access to that. I know we do a lot of outreach with your staff directly on that, but just a reminder for them to, once that storm passes, you can get in there on your phone or on a computer and just update status. That's always helpful to us. So maybe it'll be a quiet year this year. We'll see, but we'll be ready to respond and provide support. That's all I got.
Thank you. Mr. Clasby.
I don't have too much to share other than priority of mine since I've gotten office. Our lagoon is in my district, and we've been inundated the last several years with sailboaters just not moving or definitely not pumping out their gray water. So we're working in cooperation right now with the City of Fort Pierce to enhance our marine patrol and working on an ordinance that would require them to move within a certain number of hours in a certain distance. So I'm hoping that we can increase their movement to make sure they're not abandoned vessels just dumping their wastewater into our rivers. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Brower.
First, I'll just say that I hope Volusia County is getting you the information that you need in a timely fashion. I'm pretty sure they are. We'll make sure that they are. But I'm going to tell you, you won't get much from us this season because we're not going to participate in hurricane season. No more hurricanes. We've got several projects that I think I mentioned last time that are still underway. The $31.5 million upgrade to the Southeast Regional Water Reclamation Facility. I mentioned that again because I want to thank you again for $18.25 million of that 31 from the, it was from FDEP actually. And then North Peninsula drainage improvements. We're looking also at the living docks that we put out. We'll be inspecting them and they're finalizing the spring report, so we'll see how these living docks are doing, what's growing on them. Probably the thing that our council is focused on the most, which is interesting because we all agreed, was just flooding issues. Because a lot of the, I'm sure nobody else, none of the other counties are having any increased development pressure. But we are in Volusia, and a lot of the floodwaters and just everyday drain waters goes into Spruce Creek. Spruce Creek then enters, drains into the Indian River Lagoon. Even the development that's far away from the creek has canal systems that dump the water there, and it's getting to be a problem. It's harming the water quality in the creek and therefore in the lagoon. So it was interesting to hear the report on the northern end of the lagoon, and I'll be out there next week checking on some things. Would love to go on the boat ride. Let us know when it's all up, and do we have to provide our own beer? So that's it. It's going to be a busy season. So we'll see if all these projects, how they're helping us keep the algae blooms down and the water improving. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, since the last meeting, we partnered with the South Florida Water Management District to purchase 1,000 acres of Palomar land, which is a beautiful natural remnant, Everglades remnant that's in southern Martin County. We will use a portion of our half-cent sales tax in order to pay our share of that. About 10 years ago, we embarked on a very ambitious plan to convert septics to sewers in Martin County. We call it our Connect to Protect program, and we've been very aggressive about it, and we've been very successful about it. These are all accessible projects, and we've gotten very substantial grants from DEP, and we've also gotten state revolving fund loans, low interest loans of between 1.5 and 2% for these accessible projects. So we're about halfway there. We're certainly meeting or exceeding our goals. We are experiencing the effects of the new LOSM. The Corps opened up the locks on December 7th and discharged Lake Okeechobee water into the St. Lucie estuary and just stopped at the end of March. We hope that that's the last discharges we get from Lake Okeechobee ever. Indian River Lagoon South is proceeding. It's the heavily engineered projects, the C-23, 24, and 25. reservoir projects and stormwater treatment area projects are proceeding very, very well. The next stages are muck removal, and the Indian River Lagoon South is the only CERT project that has natural lands component, which includes 90,000 acres of natural lands. We're about halfway there, and fortunately, we will have $200 million in half-cent sales tax over the next 10 years to use to partner with the state and whoever else wants to partner with us to purchase those natural lands. And it's really timely to hear all these seagrass studies, because the muck removal is going to be a critical part of Everglades restoration. And when we remove 9 million cubic yards of muck from the lagoon, we're going to have to figure out how to do seagrass restoration. So it's really good that we're getting a jump on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Oliver.
Thank you. You tied right into a lot of what we were going to talk about. As Lauren stated earlier, for the district, we're really excited for the seagrass mapping year. And a huge thanks to our partners at the South Florida Water Management District and FDEP as we proceed through that. We're hopeful that this year we'll see a continued rebound in the seagrass beds across the area. But either way, the more data we have, the better action plans we can build. And tying in with that also is the presentations we heard today on the seagrass restoration efforts. I think it's critical that we continue to build up those nurseries as we turn the tide in this battle against the pollution in the river and get those grass beds going, both naturally and through our efforts in the nursery systems. And then at the risk of being in the way of lines, just to touch base on a couple of the quick projects that the St. John's has been working on and completing. The first is the 2 wetland restoration projects. One's the T10H project as a coastal wetland, the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge. We successfully completed that restoration effort, both ahead of schedule and substantially under budget, which is, kudos to the team for being able to pull that off in this environment. And then we're kicking off apologies if I pronounce it wrong, the Sternstein project in Volusia County. And it's a 35-acre wetland restoration effort restoring an old dragline ditch system. And we're hoping to actually, no pun intended, but turn dirt on that project starting this month. In the Titusville area, we'll be completing the wave attenuation device project, which is along the Garden Street Bridge that goes over into the Merritt Island National Refuge. And it's pretty cool. These are big, look like concrete balls that are put out there in the river to break up the waves that have been eating into the shoreline and not allowing the mangroves and oyster banks to really establish. So this kind of takes it back to more of a natural system. And we expect that to really be a cool project when finalized. And then finally, one of the bigger district projects that I've been involved with in the years I've been there, and in Brevard County, is the Crane Creek M1 Canal project. Wrapping that up hopefully this month, just in time for hurricane season. But that is approximately I think it's about $25 or $30 million project, and it's taking approximately 5,000 acres of land in the Melbourne and West Melbourne area and diverting the M1 Canal back to its historic flow to the St. John's. So it's both keeping that fresh water from entering into the Indian River Lagoon where it didn't traditionally go, but it's also going to estimated, I think it's 21 or 23,000 pounds of nitrogen a year that will be kept out of the system. So a big project there, and we're hoping to be able to continue to do more as we restore the natural stormwater flows. That's it from my end. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Commissioner Atkinson.
So our Director of Natural Resources in Brevard County, Virginia Baker, is always doing something. And so I asked her, hey, what should I say? So she gave me this list, which you all have, and I put out there as well. A couple of things just to mention is that we've been doing a lot with the septic to sewer. Stormwater basin stuff is going extraordinarily well. They took 114,000 cubic yards of muck from the lagoon. We've had over $40 million of grants from the state, so everything in Brevard County is is going steadily positive, like Virginia wants it to, like we all do.
Good.
That's all.
All right, well, thank you. In Indian River County, we've got a lot of projects going on. We had a meeting with our utilities director, of course, about septic to sewer projects and what we're going to do and how aggressive we're going to be and what monies we can find to help save some of the cost on that to the taxpayer and to the people that use the system. Got a lot of good things going on in the lagoon. Matter of fact, I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce our lagoon specialist back there, Melissa Meisenberg. She works with she's within our natural resources department, and she heads up a lot of the stuff. I know y'all are faced with derelict vessels. We've got a lot of derelict vessels that we have taken out, have done real well with that. We are going to have a muck removal project starting, I think, fairly soon, if it hadn't already started. Got just a lot of really good small lagoon projects that are turning into big projects. I think we have a seagrass planting thing this month, correct? We're doing that. It's going to be a big project. We've got a lot of really good things going on up there. Our environmental lands acquisition panel, we had the $50 million grant that was approved by the voters back in 2022. We're moving ahead with that. We've got a list of ranked possible conservation lands for purchase that we're looking on. Of course, we're hoping to take that $50 million amount and leverage it into $100 million or more to buy conservation lands. We've got some really good spots in Indian River County picked out that we're going to start negotiating with and find out where we're going with it. And I look forward to seeing how that turns out. The biggest thing, though, it's tied into some lagoon efforts, but we are this month, next month, and it ends next month, celebrating Indian River County's 100th anniversary from when we broke away from the tyrants of St. Lucie County in 1925. So that's coming up, and we have some lagoon projects tied with that, with a lot of good other things that are going to happen with that. But that's kind of a big deal up here in this county right now, celebrating that. So got a lot of really good things going on. Again, our natural resources staff is working hard to move projects forward, and they're being very creative and very very consistent in their planning and thoughtful in their planning. We are, like many of us here, waiting to see what the state legislature decides to do about tourist tax dollars and other things versus putting us in the predicament possibly of, are we going to restore beaches or are we going to fix roads? What are we going to do? So Mr. Watkins, if you could help us with any of that stuff. You probably have as much pull in the legislature as we do. So, but there are some issues that we're keeping an eye on. But other than that, I want to thank everybody for a great meeting. And our next meeting will be on August 22nd, 2025, right here at 9:30 a.m. With that, I will call us adjourned. Thank you.